Welcome, everybody, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks. Thank you for listening to the show. What you're hearing right now is My Town by Montgomery Gentry, and there is a reason that I'm playing this song. Troy Gentry, the other guy in the duo Montgomery Gentry, there's two of them. There's Eddie Gentry, and then there's Eddie Montgomery, and then there's Troy Gentry. Troy Gentry unfortunately passed away in a helicopter accident last week. He was on his way to a concert in New Jersey, and complications with the helicopter happened, and they crashed, and Troy Gentry was sadly on that plane. I tell you, I don't care how rich I ever get or how famous that I ever get, I'm never too big to get on a big plane. People always want to get on these small planes when they make it famous or they make it rich, but these small planes are dangerous. Now, yes, they go down just like the big ones, but it's more likely to happen on the small ones. They're just anything that you can roll the window down and put your arm out of, I don't want to get on it. I went up one time with my friend Stephen Click. He's a pilot, and he had a plane. He owned a little Cessna, and he took me up in it one time, and we flew to Nashville. And I could literally roll the window down and stick my arm outside the window like a car. It was so strange, and there was like a little hole in the door, and you could stick your finger out, and you could feel the wind, and we were 8,000 feet up in the air. It was definitely an experience, but something that I don't think I would ever do again. I never want to get on a small plane. Those small private jets, I'm telling you, they're just death traps. But he died. He left behind about an $8 million net worth fortune. He left behind a wife and kids. And he was very involved as a Central Kentucky person. He lived in Lexington. He lived just that Kentucky culture. He owned a restaurant here for a while in Kentucky. He was a big UK football fan, big UK basketball fan. The other day when I was at the EKU game, his nephew, John Michael Montgomery's son, I think his name is Walker. No, what is his name? Something Montgomery, obviously. But he came out and he paid tribute to his uncle. They was playing Troy Gentry songs over the speakers. And it was really cool to see Kentucky kind of pay tribute to him. Now, folks, I do apologize. The audio for this podcast is going to go in and out. We're having some technical malfunctions here in the studio where the microphone seems a little fuzzy, and you're going to hear sounds from outside. So that's all because of the soundproof walls that we got in here and the microphones and stuff. It's not wanting to work today. So just bear with us if you hear technical difficulties coming in and out of the podcast. Guys, I just want to say I'm very excited about this movie coming out. Halloween is rebooting back with its original star, Jamie Lee Curtis, who played Laurie Strode. It is continuing the original movie franchise that John Carpenter started back in 1978. They're coming out with a Halloween 40 years later. And that whole franchise, that whole Halloween franchise is my favorite scary movie franchise. It was just great. But it was the only movies that I liked was Halloween 1, 2, and Halloween H2O. Resurrection was a part of that franchise. Laurie Strode was in that. She died in that movie, which kind of upset me because she was like the main star. She was in it from the 70s, and it was cool because she came back 20 years later, and she always kicked Michael Myers' ass. It was always nice. It was always nice just to watch that franchise. It was just a really cool thing, and they killed her off. They made several other Halloween movies without her in it, and now they're creating back with an original franchise because Rob Zombie tried to do his own little franchise of it. Didn't work, but they're coming back out with it, and I just wanted to say that I am pumped. I love scary movies. It's my favorite. It is the big scary movie out right now. It's about the clown. I haven't watched it. I want to watch it, but I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard some people say, "Oh, it's great," and then I've heard some people say it's not scary. It's more funny. It's probably not very good, to be honest with you. but I'd like to be the judge of it myself. A lot to talk about, guys. A lot to talk about. A lot has happened.
There is crime all over Lexington. Where I live, the 4057 apartment complex, that is a place where you see no crime. It's a very nice apartment community. I was one of the first people to move in it back in 2012. It's only been there for a couple years, but it is a place that's in a nice part of Lexington. It's in South Lexington off Manowar, in between Nicholasville and Tate's Creek, right across from the Summit. And it's just a really nice place. I've lived there. I've never lived anywhere else. I've always lived there ever since I've lived in Lexington, so about 5 years going on 6. Never an instant. Well, the other night, there was a murder at the complex. I was sitting on the porch chatting with one of my friends there. He was my neighbor, James, and we were sitting there and we heard a loud scream. And James looked over at me and said, "Man, that sounds like somebody getting killed." And I just kind of laughed and I said, "Yeah, it sure does." And I shrugged it off, and so did he, because sometimes when you're living in an apartment community, you hear screams and it's just people having a good time, or it's just you hear screams. That's just the way it is. But it just so happened that that time the scream that we heard was the man getting stabbed, and it just so happened to turn out that he died from that stab wound. He was killed by his 26-year-old girlfriend who lived in the community. The man who was murdered did not live there. And the woman, I've never seen her before. They released a picture. She has a butterfly tattoo under her right eye, so it would be really hard for me to forget that face. And I've never seen her. So I don't think there's anything to worry about still living in that complex. To me, it seems like that murder was an act of rage, a sudden rage. I think that the woman got really upset. She stabbed her boyfriend, and I don't think she meant to stab him as hard as she did, and she punctured something that messed him up, and it killed him.
Crime can happen anywhere. It just doesn't happen in the hood. It doesn't happen in bad communities, poor communities. It doesn't just happen there. It happens everywhere. It happens in very nice neighborhoods. And just be aware of your surroundings, folks. When you go outside, just be aware. Look around. If you don't lock your car, please get into a habit of locking your car, because people can sneak in the backseat of your car, wait for you to get in. It's a crazy world out there. It's a dangerous world out there. So just be cautious and be careful. That woman was relaxing in her apartment one minute, and then the next minute she's a murderer facing prison for the rest of her life over something stupid. It could have been over drugs. It could have been over a domestic dispute. She could have found him cheating or anything. I don't know the details, but I do know that the woman, when she stabbed her husband at first, she claimed that she did not do it. She claimed that somebody came from outside the bushes and came up in the breezeway and stabbed him and left him there. And then she called the police. But I don't know. The guy didn't die till the next day, so I don't know if he had enough in him to say that she was the one that stabbed him. But he ended up dying, and she is now charged with first-degree murder. Had a nice little weekend last weekend. Went and watched the opening home football game of the UK Wildcats. They faced EKU. It was an ugly game. Both defense and offense did not play well, and the Cats won. They ended up beating EKU, but I really didn't like what I saw from the team. If they're going to play like that against EKU, how are they going to do against these powerhouses? Now, so far, the Cats are 2-0. They beat Southern Miss their first game, and now they beat EKU. Their next game is South Carolina, one of the most important games of the season because it's on the road. It's a win that they need, and Will Muschamp and his South Carolina Gamecocks, they're due. They've not beaten Kentucky in the last 2 years. They're due for a win. And Muschamp has his team the way he wants them to be playing right now. It's going to be a good game. Hopefully Kentucky can make those adjustments to where it needs to be for Kentucky to do good against the Gamecocks. the offense is really struggling. Benny Snell is a guy that teams know about now, and he can't do his little sneak runs like he used to. They're preparing for Benny Snell. See, Benny Snell came out of nowhere last year, and now people are ready for him, and teams are prepared for Benny. Really, Benny shines when the offense gets tired. So you'll see Benny start shining in the third and fourth quarter because he wears the offense down, and then he can bounce around like he does. I wish we would throw the ball more. Steven Johnson, he has it in him to make the potential passes and the long passes, because we just really can't run the ball. And if Steven Johnson, if he could get more confidence and just throw the ball more and get better open looks, that would be Kentucky's best bet. That would have been really nice to have Dorian Baker in this situation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening to the show. I'm Adam Banks. This has been another episode of Off the Cuff. I'm going to leave you with some more Troy Gentry singing with his good buddy, Troy Gentry singing with his good buddy Eddie Montgomery. This song is something to be proud of. We'll see you, ladies and gentlemen, in the next episode.
I turned out. Well, he lowered his voice. Then he raised his brow. Said, let me tell you right now.